I think it needs manpower and the brain capital that this room represents and many of us represent. And I think it needs as much of your time. And even if you give 10% of your time and 0.01% of your wealth, it'll make an incredible difference, because the challenges for India to solve the problems are very unique. And I don't think today we have the mature enough foundations and NGOs at that scale to be able to take it there. And we need the brain power of corporate India to actually contribute in an intelligent manner, because there are lots of problems to be solved. And unless we're on the ground, we don't know how to solve them. And I think that's just my sort of appeal to everyone, that that's the next level of some sense of participation of sweat equity outside of their financial contribution. But again, thank you, German Jewelry and Export Promotion Council, for having us here and for this generous donation. Thank you.
Well, it's really interesting that 36 years ago, they were the first ones to take you out of the country, and today, the quote I thought of, or the line that I thought of is first thing. Have you noticed that happening? Have you noticed in the last few years that the ones who thought that this dream was absolutely ludicrous are now on board and behind you?
Well, I think the main thing was how we wanted to do it. I think what really everyone laughed at us a lot and really did call us crazy, actually, are now saying this is the only way to do it, which is the 360-degree model. And I think that is actually, honestly, it's really hard. It's really tough. And it's a struggle. All single day we have huge problems. We overcome them in partnership with our community, in partnership with the government. And we have 30 fabulous partners, and we have an amazing team. So yeah, I do agree.
When was...
I just want to add to that. Zainab didn't mention one thing. You see, we come from media and entertainment, where most of the days everyone thinks we're mad and crazy.
Yeah.
So we're quite used to that thought process, where everyone's questioning, why are you doing what you're doing half the time?
And I think also, to add to Rani's point, is we're also really used to failing. I think in media, you fail spectacularly. When you take out a movie or a big TV show that the next day is an utter dud, the whole world knows about it, and the whole world is like waggling their fingers at you and saying, see, I told you this is not going to work. So we're used to it, and we're okay with it. We don't mind if we fail.
Trust me, I know about that. I've read a few of my own reviews which made me want to hide. I mean, it's so interesting you say about entertainment and media, and we're all about emotion, about stirring emotion. Is there, and I know there'd be so many, but the first moment or some moment that happened which made you believe that you were on the right path, something that you saw, a child, an old person, anything that comes to mind?
You know, that's nice and storytelling-wise, anecdotally important, but it doesn't work that way. Life is not about that. But I think what happened to us was not really when we looked at scaling this up, but I would say 20 years back when we started our company, and I think we had sort of decided that 10% of whatever we were doing, we would put aside, and that was very small beginnings. And I remember at our board meeting, one of our investors had just come in and he said, well, this is all good, but what about the years in which you're not going to make a profit? And we said, we're entrepreneurs, we'll figure that out. So I think that the base was really the philosophy. I think it comes into the culture. It builds organizations and in culture. And I think the 20 years of that took us to the last 3.5 years of what we're doing today.
But if you saw that lady in the white coat, I'm going to tell you a story of one of them. They're called Swaraksha Mitras. The one I'm going to tell you about is not on the wall. I think it's outside, though. Her name is Vidya Kule. About 6 years ago, we asked her to come and join one of our self-help groups. She joined one of the self-help groups. 3 years ago, she became a Swaraksha Mitra. And today, sorry, not today, because she just had to resign after a little while, but she became the Sarpanch of her village after becoming a widow. Sorry, I missed my whole point of my story is, her timeline is as follows. She became a part of our self-help group. She became a Swaraksha Mitra, which is meaning that she goes from door to door and actually saves lives. In the middle of this whole thing, she became a widow. And then she was elected Sarpanch of her village. So that's the story. assignment, one of her earliest assignments when she was 17 years old, was for De Beers. So there you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Social good for me as well. We've been neighbors for a long time, and when I was young and kitchenless in Mumbai, so I think this started a long time ago. I think that was your first emotion of seeing social good happening.
That was my first experience in social good.
And from there on, you decided to save tigers and, of course, do a lot more things.
Yes.
But you, of course, are an avid supporter, you're an ardent supporter of the efforts of the Swadesh Foundation. So tell us about how you've seen Ronnie and Zarina sort of passionately get involved in this over the last few years.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Swadesh, for yet again allowing me to come here and cheer for you, because I feel a great sense of pride every time I get the opportunity to. Growing up, there's always a sense of participation. One would like to feel, I mean, your school encourages you and then your college does. At home, I was encouraged, and I always felt a great sense of happiness every time I came back after doing something that I knew was making a difference in somebody's life. And I would often wonder, when does that stop? And then you grow older and you realize it stops when you become busy with yourself and expanding your own life ambitions and going on to doing the very many things that you want to do, the goals you want to achieve. And somewhere along that process of that participation and that fantastic feeling that one gets in participating with more people than just yourself starts disappearing. And it's very interesting how, despite great successes, there is a kind of an emptiness that looms. It just kind of takes over. And I think what Ronnie and Zarina are examples of are individuals who grew as individuals first and then as an organization, but they never lost sight of that very important aspect of being and being contented individuals, and remembering that the only way they can be truly happy is if they're making a difference. And I know that has more to do with Zarina than it does with Ronnie. No.
Oops.
No. Okay, she will, of course. You're all heart, Zarina. And I know that without him, your heart would not beat. But, and you agree with me, right, Ronnie? Yeah. So, anyway, let's go back to the story. And when they first called me and told me about what they were doing with Swadesh, blown away. I was so amazed at their intention. And I also knew somewhere within my heart that it was an intention that they would make possible. Because they just are those kind of people. They make everything that they set out to do happen. And it's been a remarkable 3.5 years of watching them grow from strength to strength, making great strides, making such a huge social impact. And I work a lot with corporates. I'm on the board of some organizations, and I know how difficult it is for NGOs in the country to convince corporations to invest in them. And a lot of corporates have agendas. So a lot of the CSR donations that are made, or the money spent through CSR, is always, everybody has like their own thing. We will do health, and we will do education, or we will do XYZ, but nobody really says, I'm going to support somebody who's doing everything. So I know what a big challenge it must be for them to convince people to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to back an effort that wants to take care of everything. And, but there has been a great growth in attitudes of people, wonderful, wonderful changes. I think when CSR was first introduced, it was done sometimes grudgingly and sometimes because, people were getting a tax benefit. But it's amazing to see how wonderfully corporations have started reveling in the good work that they're doing. They're taking a great sense of pride in their participation. They're really, really proud about their accomplishments because, you know, when you reach out and you make a difference and you start seeing results, it really puts a sense of goodness in you. And I think it's also transforming the way in India and the way people, individuals are even approaching their own lives. So it's wonderful times in India. There's a lot of work to be done, and I'm just so happy I'm sitting in a room full of people who are doing that work. And thank Zarina and Ronnie for inspiring change, because, you know, it's a wonderful thing to hear great stories, but it's another thing to see people in action, see people doing the work. And I think the only legacy that all of us are always looking for is a great story, right, to leave behind. And I think that those stories are changing every day. They're becoming more about we and less about I.
Fantastic. There's a million stories behind, and a million stories every 5. Like you rightfully said, it's not just about giving money, it's also about giving time. It's sweat equity and being there. Yeah, Dia.
One thing I quickly want to add,
Sure.
because they both spoke about their volunteer group, and that's something that I find is so remarkable, because there are people from cities, urban centers, and of course rural centers, who are part of Swadesh because they want to give, they want to share their skills. You know, they're actually out there on the ground doing work because they believe that sharing their skills is going to impact change. And that's a huge thing. I mean, they could be busy in the city making money, doing other things, but they choose to be out there in rural India, creating sustainable solutions and sharing their skill sets, which is fantastic.
Truly collaborative at every level. Well, let's...
Gaurav, can I say one thing?
Yeah, sure, of course.
I want to recommend one gentleman who's in this room.